I know that there are many questions, and at this stage, I will not be able to answer all of them.
An overwhelming grief has taken hold of a community in India and beyond as investigators try to figure out what caused an Air India flight to fall out of the sky shortly after takeoff, killing more than 250 people. But someone who may be critical to that investigation? The sole survivor of that crash. Will he be able to provide any key details about what happened before the London-bound Boeing jet went down? What about the black boxes? Was this just a horrific accident? Was it something more? We're working to get answers, and we're going to talk about everything we know so far. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. We're covering something a little different today here on Sidebar because there is a lot of mystery surrounding an Air India flight that went down just after takeoff this week, hitting a medical college hostel in Ahmedabad, India. According to Indian officials, there were 241 people on board this flight, which was headed for London. So you have 229 passengers, 12 crew members, pilots. Everyone on board was killed except one man apparently walked out of the rubble. Yeah, we're going to be talking about him in a minute, but here's the latest information that we know as of Friday morning. So within just seconds of takeoff in Ahmedabad, the Boeing Dreamliner started coming back down, almost looking like it was landing, according to witnesses. But inside the cockpit, the pilots were sending out a Mayday call. The exact reason for that call doesn't seem to be known yet, but the BBC reports that the plane's last transmitted data showed it reached a height of only 625 feet before starting its fall. A massive explosion followed, shooting a fireball into the sky, sending up clouds of smoke that could be seen for miles. According to reports from BBC, Air India confirmed that 169 Indian nationals were on the flight, along with 53 Britons, 7 Portuguese nationals, 1 Canadian. There were 11 children, 2 babies were reportedly on board as well. It is just absolutely awful. But the tragedy didn't end there, because the dean of a medical college said that 4 students were killed in the building that the plane hit. They were having lunch in a canteen area when the plane slammed into the building. There are these chilling photos from inside that show these abandoned plates of food at tables that are covered in dust and debris. At least 4 other people on the ground were killed. Dozens of others had to be rushed to hospitals. In fact, DNA testing is underway to try to identify bodies at the crash site. And this comes as grieving family members are trying to come to terms with this sudden loss of their loved ones. So far, more than 200 bodies have been recovered, according to reporting from the BBC, but many are charred beyond recognition. India's Aircraft Accident Investigations Bureau remains on scene looking for 2 black boxes, and they hope that those black boxes will provide some answers about what happened here. One apparently contains flight data, and the other is apparently a cockpit voice recorder. This is per the AP. Experts from the UK, the US, they are also traveling to India to help, including officials from the National Transportation Safety Board, the Federal Aviation Administration, Boeing and General Electric. They're sending experts. So to try to answer some of the questions surrounding this just awful, awful event, I want to bring in Justin T. Green, a prominent aviation attorney. Justin, thanks so much for taking the time to talk about it. This is really horrible. Overall, commercial air travel is generally safe, although we're seeing a lot of this in the news recently. You don't expect something like this. What are your initial thoughts?
Well, thanks for having me. And my initial thoughts are really with the families, as always, that lost loved ones both on the ground and in the airplane. This terrible, terrible accident. But you raised a really important point: the black boxes that they're looking for, the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder. The answers to what happened are going to be on those devices. So the flight data recorder is going to essentially give us information about what kind of power the engines were providing at the time of the incident started, the accident started. The cockpit voice recorder is going to not just tell us what the pilots were talking to air traffic control, which you already mentioned, a Mayday call. They already know that happened, but also internal to the cockpit. So the checklist items that they were doing both before takeoff and after takeoff, especially regarding the flaps and the gear, might hold some information about what happened. But then the flight data recorder regarding what the engines were giving. So the speculation right now is some sort of power loss or some sort of configuration or a combination of both. May be something that the investigators should be looking at.
Like I said, I know this is a different kind of case than we usually cover here on Sidebar, and I know it's a really, really sad one, but it is an important one that we wanted to bring you. And for that, I have to thank our sponsor, Odoo, for helping make this happen. Now, if you don't know what Odoo is, it is a powerful all-in-one business software that helps you manage everything from sales to accounting, and yes, inventory. Their inventory dashboard makes it easy to track receipts, delivery orders, POS orders, and see what's waiting, late, back ordered, all at a glance. You can pay for receipts, automate vendor reminders, schedule deliveries, all in just a few clicks. Plus, you get full warehouse management, the ability to set picking strategies, and real-time stock visibility. And the best part? Odoo's inventory app syncs seamlessly with your sales and e-commerce apps, so everything stays connected. Do you want an inventory software that comes fully packed? Check out Odoo for a free 15-day trial at odoo.com/sidebarainventory. I've heard a rumor that in plane crashes, they happen right after takeoff or during landing. I don't know if that's accurate, but if this happens shortly after takeoff like this, and I'll get into some of the rumors that are coming out there, but if it happens at this point, what do you suspect could be a cause? You mentioned it a little bit. You think it's a power failure?
Well, I don't. It's too early to really speculate, but I know that that's one of the things that the investigators will be looking at.
Okay.
Accidents happen near the ground because altitude and airspeed give pilots more options. So if you're low and slow, as you are when you're coming into land and when you're taking off, if something happens, a mechanical problem happens, you don't have a lot of options. So this airplane is not a glider. So if you lose power at a low altitude, you're not going to be able to really glide, and back to the airport. You're essentially going to be in a very fast descent, and you're going to end up like these people did, crashing out, not at the airport.
As far as we know, there were no Americans on board, but you're seeing these U.S. agencies coming to the aid and providing help during the investigation. What is this investigation? I mean, you talked about the black boxes, but I guess the question is, how do they help with the investigation?
So the way that investigations work, both here in the United States and internationally, is that the investigators need to rely on experts about the issues that they're facing. So here, the experts about Boeing aircraft are Boeing employees for the most part. The experts regarding General Electric engines are General Electric employees. So they're in the U.S. There's this like party representative system where the NTSB will allow manufacturers, operators, all of these different parties to participate in the investigation so that they can leverage their expertise. So if they're looking, for example, at a component part of the wreckage, someone from Boeing might be there to identify what exactly component it was, when it was manufactured, what lot it was in, all of the information that the investigators might need.
And the FAA as well, right? This
Right.
is their prime ground for it.
Well, this is an American aircraft. These are American engines. This is an aircraft that was designed here, certified here. So and flown here. So there's a very major interest, not just in India, but throughout the world, and in particular the United States, about the safety of the Dreamliner.
And look, you made a caveat that this is too early to speculate. The investigation is going to take a while. It could take a very long time, but there are theories that are already starting to creep up about what happened here. So the BBC reports that this is the first time a 787-8 Dreamliner has been part of a fatal crash since it started commercial service in 2011. And the outlet spoke with some aviation experts and Indian pilots who've flown Dreamliners in and out of Ahmedabad. And one of the theories is that there could have been a double engine failure, something that is apparently exceedingly rare according to aviation experts. The most well-known example is what's known as the Miracle on the Hudson. That's when a U.S. Airways Airbus lost both engines to a bird strike after taking off from New York's LaGuardia Airport. An ex-pilot told the BBC that witness video doesn't appear to show a double engine failure, but it's still a possibility. Multiple pilots and aviation experts also told the outlet that Ahmedabad Airport is notorious for bird strikes, which can be incredibly dangerous. Times of India reported data from the airport authority in September of 2023 saying there had been 38 bird strikes over the previous year. Another theory focuses on what Justin was talking about before, the plane's wing flaps, that if the flaps weren't properly extended, the plane maybe would have struggled to gain altitude, especially with a full flight and a full fuel tank. But the two pilots in the cockpit had thousands of hours of flight time and likely would have known something was wrong with the flaps prior to takeoff. Weather could have also been a factor. It was reportedly 104 degrees in Ahmedabad on Thursday. High temperatures can contribute to a struggle to gain altitude, according to a pilot who spoke with the BBC. Now, Justin, I laid out a few theories here. There's speculation. Some might say it's armchair quarterbacking from witness videos, but is there a danger? A, is there a danger to theorize this early on? And B, are you listening to this and saying, wait a minute, any of those could actually be causes for what happened?
Unfortunately, all of them could be causes of what happened. All I'd say is they don't have to wait until the investigation is done before safety information is going to come out. So the black boxes that you mentioned before are going to be downloaded within a month. They're going to be found. They're going to be brought to a lab, maybe in France, maybe back here in the United States, and they're going to be examined. The information, safety information coming out of that, coming out, learned early in the investigation, isn't going to be kept until the investigation is done. The authorities and the investigators and the authorities, like the FAA, are going to be coming out and making safety recommendations. So I think I think all of the points that you brought, including the temperature, including the bird problem, the most recent bird strike accident appears to be the Jeju accident in Korea, where the aircraft lost both engines and unfortunately crashed with the loss of everyone on board. That to me was one of the first thoughts that came on, because what else causes the dual engine failure? There's a reason the aircraft has two engines. So if one fails, the other one would be able to be used by the pilots to make an emergency landing.
I have to ask this question, is if you know, how do you prevent a bird strike? Because that seems like it's so random. What do you do?
The pilots have really limited options. It's really a question of design of the engines, design of the aircraft, and also the airport authorities trying to mitigate the bird activity in the local area. So airports generally have systems in place to try to keep. In New York, for example, I don't know if everyone knows, but we have a geese problem in New York. Those geese are very large and really could pose a lot of danger to aviation. So airport authorities spend a lot of time trying to mitigate the geese population in the vicinity of the aircraft, and also the routes of the aircraft to try to avoid places where birds congregate.
And if there was an issue that could have potentially been detected before takeoff, to talk about the wing flaps, is this investigation include looking into the pilots as well? And I'm not here to put blame on anyone. I want to make that very clear. Just trying to understand how it works. Does the investigation include looking into them, their history, their training, anything like that?
Absolutely. The investigation is a real man and machine investigation, probably man, machine, and system investigation, meaning they're going to look at operation issues regarding the pilots, regarding their training, regarding their supervision, the aircraft, obviously, that we talked about, its component parts, including the engines, but also, the systems in place, like things like bird mitigation or anything that comes up in the investigation is going to be looked at.
So Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited the crash site, visited hospitals, spoke with the first responders, the distraught family members. This crash happened in his home state. And aside from just how absolutely sad this is, Prime Minister Modi also met with the sole survivor of the crash. I mentioned him before, a man named Vishwaskumar Ramesh. According to the BBC, Ramesh was born in India, but is a British national married with a 4-year-old child. He spoke with Indian media outlet DD News, telling them that soon after takeoff, the lights inside the plane started flickering, and then the plane crashed into the hostel. According to Ramesh, the section he was sitting in seat 11A, near an emergency exit, was near the ground and didn't make contact with the building. He told DD News, "I managed to unbuckle myself, used my leg to push through that opening and crawled out. And when the door broke and I saw there was some space, I tried to get out of there, and I did. For a moment, I felt like I was going to die too, but when I opened my eyes and looked around, I realized I was alive. I still can't believe how I survived. I walked out of the rubble." Unbelievable. Now, Ramesh was able to make it to an ambulance, took him to a hospital. He has injuries, doctors told the AP, but they aren't life-threatening. Now, Ramesh's family says that his brother, AJ, was also on the flight, didn't survive. Justin, there's something like this. How rare is it for someone to survive a plane crash?
It's and to be the sole survivor is really rare in this case. But accidents that happen on approach or on takeoff, because the forces are involved in the crash. Most people who die in plane crashes die of blunt force trauma. There's really no way you can survive if the G forces are so great that everyone on board is instantly killed. But so there's been a lot of, I'm thinking of the Asiana crash in San Francisco. 3 dead, everyone else survived. The Turkish Airlines crash in Amsterdam, 9 dead, everyone else survived. But to be the only survivor, I can't remember, but I think I know of one other instance where only one person survived. So he's obviously, it's tragic that he lost his brother, and obviously tragic that everyone else on the ground and in the airplane died. But what a remarkable story. Very lucky person.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. I don't use that word lightly. It's hard to believe. It's unbelievable. Does it matter where you sit on the plane?
It does, but it's hard to say. It does depending on how the airplane hits. So, old wives' tales would be that the back of the airplane is the safest place, and that the front of the airplane. But that's when the airplane hits essentially nose first, so the G forces are felt greater up front. But if the airplane hit, the 3 deaths in San Francisco were all in the back of the airplane. So there's a reason he survived and no one else did, because of where he was in that airplane, but you couldn't predict it in advance.
How important is he as a witness?
I think he may be, because I think the flight data recorder will probably back up what he's saying about the lights flickering. But having someone survive, obviously having a pilot survive would be a better witness, because the pilot is privy to, exactly what's going on in the cockpit, which he's not. But I think he is somebody who can certainly give color to what happened, especially, there's going to be lawsuits. So what happened in the what happened in the cabin is very important to the damages that's going to be claimed in the lawsuits. The flickering lights is a very interesting and may suggest some sort of loss of power,
Let's talk about litigation in a second, because I was going to ask you about that.
Sure.
So after the crash, get this, there were scares involving other flights. The BBC reports that an Air India flight that was bound from New Delhi from Thailand was diverted back to the Phuket International Airport Friday after the pilot reportedly found a bomb threat message in the restroom shortly after takeoff. All 156 passengers, they were evacuated once the plane was back on the ground. There was an inspection of the plane. Outlet TPN National reports that no explosives or suspicious items were found on the plane. Justin, when you think about that, how often do you see these sorts of hoaxes, particularly after a major tragedy like this? Is it something that officials have come to expect?
I think, ever since 9/11, and maybe even going back to the 70s with all those hijacks that were occurring back then, there's been a concern for, bad people wanting to do bad things, whether for, as terrorists or hoaxers. It doesn't really happen as much as you might think. And I don't want to encourage, I guess I don't want to encourage it.
No, I know.
It really is, and you will go to jail. They'll track you down, and you'll go to jail for a long time just for making a hoax. But obviously, when tensions are high, these things happen more often.
Now, Air India's CEO, Campbell Wilson, released a video statement about the crash. Take a look.
The investigations will take time, but anything we can do now, we are doing. We know that many people are concerned for the welfare of their loved ones. We have set up a special helpline that friends and family can reach us at. The number is 1-800-5691-444. That is 1-800-5691-444. We understand that people are eager for information. Please know that we will continue to share accurate and timely information as soon as we can. But anything we report must be accurate and not speculative.
So Air India is run by the Tata Group, which took over the airline from government control in 2022. And on X, formerly known as Twitter, officials said that they would be offering compensation to the families that lost loved ones. The post reads, "We're deeply anguished by the tragic event involving Air India Flight 171. No words can adequately express the grief we feel at this moment. Our thoughts and prayers are with the families who have lost their loved ones and with those who have been injured." Tata Group will provide 1 crore rupees to the families of each person who has lost their life in this tragedy. Now, 1 crore rupee is equivalent to around $117,000 US. The statement goes on to say, "We will also cover the medical expenses of those injured and ensure that they receive all necessary care and support. Additionally, we will provide support in the building up of the BJ Medical's hostel. We remain steadfast in standing with the affected families and communities during this unimaginable time." Justin, is that enough? Is there anything else that they could or should do? I mean, you talked about potential lawsuits here, and you wonder if it would be against Air India, Boeing. So talk to us about that response and talk to us about potential litigation.
Yeah. So what they're doing is what they are supposed to be doing under, their obligations under international and probably Indian law. So lawsuits, this is an international flight involving people from India and Great Britain. I think there's one Canadian and probably people from other nations on board. The liability and the obligations of Air India to the passengers are governed by the Montreal Convention, which is an international treaty that gives the rights to, gives obligations of the airlines and passengers to compensate them for all their damages. So it also tells you where you can bring a lawsuit. So here, the Brits will have a choice of either bringing the lawsuit most likely in England or down in India, and they will almost certainly choose to bring the lawsuits in England because the damages there are most likely greater than they would be in India, and also the logistics of it. So Air India is going to be facing a bunch of lawsuits. A lot of them have to be brought in India. So if you're from India and your destination of the flight was India, you don't really have a choice to suing anywhere but India. Then the bigger question is whether there's any sort of prox liability case. All of the victims are going to be wanting to find out what really caused the accident, who's responsible, and then to hold them, to account. So here, this is an American manufactured airplane, American manufactured engines. So they are going to be looking at potential litigation in the United States. It's too soon to know whether there's any sort of prox liability accident. The Dreamliner has had some hiccups, but as you mentioned earlier, this is the first major accident involving a Dreamliner. So it's really too soon to say whether there is a mechanical or design or manufacturing defect.
Yeah, it's getting to the bottom of what happened and whether anybody was responsible. Justin Green, thank you so much for taking the time. Just a really, really, really sad situation. We don't usually cover this kind of story on Sidebar, but I'm happy we had a chance to because I think it's an important one to cover. Justin, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.